Welcome back to the Turnaround Boardroom. I am Paul Maskill, and this is another boardroom briefing solo show, just me. And today we are talking about one of the most dangerous lies in the home service industry. Busy is not profitable. So, does this sound familiar at all? Your calendar is full, your technicians are running hard, the phones are ringing, Google reviews are coming in, yet cash still feels tighter than it should, especially with the revenue that you're actually bringing in. If any of that sounds familiar, this episode is for you. And just like the last episode, I want to be clear about what this is and what this is not. This is not about motivation. I am a fractional CFO. I try to remove the emotion from everything and just get into the reality of what the numbers are actually telling us. This is not about telling your team to work harder. Let's go do more. Because historically, that gets us in a position that is not great if we are not consistently profitable. So this is a board level room conversation about why activity often increases stress instead of profit, and how smart operators, usually the people that you don't see posting on social media, usually the most successful operators in any business, and home service included, you don't really know who they are. You don't really hear from them. They are focused on their business. They are focused on their numbers. They don't care about all the vanity stuff. They don't care about social media. They don't care about how many vans they have on the road or what their top line revenue is. Let's start there. Let's start with the illusion. In residential service especially, busyness feels like safety. We get stressed out when we're not busy, and then we get stressed out when we are busy. When the schedule is full, we feel relief. It's like, thank you. We don't have to stress about this for another day or two. And then on the flip side of that, when we're too booked out, then we get stressed as well, because then we are losing calls, losing jobs, losing revenue. However, once we kind of get to that comfortable point where the schedule's full, we got a good rhythm, we assume the hard part is over. The owner assumes that profit will now take care of itself. While we're doing enough revenue, we've had this mindset all along that once I get to X, whatever X is, or once we get to 5 million, then it's going to be easier. Once we get to 8 million, it's going to be easy. Once we get to 10 million, it's going to be easy. But here's the thing. If it's not easy today, more revenue is not going to solve that problem. If technicians are booked solid and jobs are getting completed, how could the business not be making money? It seems like we know what we're doing. From the outside, it looks like we are. And this belief gets reinforced everywhere. We look at all the things. We hear it from our friends, family, neighbors. Wow, I see your vans everywhere. Wow, you guys are crushing it. Seems like you keep growing. All your Google reviews are great. The board is packed. Everyone in the company feels like, wow, these guys are making a lot of money. The other competitors see it and like, wow, they really got it going on. I wish I had it going on like they do. But even you as the owner know something is not right. You might feel a temporary sense of control when, the board is in a good spot. It's not overbooked. It's not underbooked. But again, that is the illusion. And that's where we really get frustrated, right? We're busy, but we're not productive. We're busy, but we're not profitable. And at the end of the day, we're just a firefighter. We're showing up every day, making sure the board stays busy, making sure everyone's happy, making sure the customers are happy. We're doing all the things. And in my opinion, we are so close at that point to then having a really successful company. But again, activity does not equal profitability. And that's where we get things wrong sometimes. Just because the calendar is full doesn't mean we have healthy margins. Just because we keep growing and adding technicians and adding vans doesn't mean we're more profitable. Here is, what's actually going on. The uncomfortable truth is a business can be extremely busy and still be structurally unprofitable. And structurally is the key word. If we don't have a solid structure, a solid foundation to get to the next level profitably, we will never actually achieve the goals that we want, because adding more on top of that unstructurally sound business, it's just going to make it crumble eventually. Many home service business, whether I've talked to them or not, we know that once we get to a certain point, we're going to stay pretty steady. I mean, if you just look at the trades in general, less people are going into it. Now, yes, 2026, it is starting to shift. A lot of people in the corporate world are realizing it's not cracked up what everyone thought it was going to be. Going to college and getting, a $200,000 loan in order to get a 4-year degree, and then not really having the ability to make money, and then having student debt and all that. The tide is starting to turn, but historically, business is usually pretty busy. Business continues to grow. We continue to grow over time. You might be one of the busiest companies in your market, at least from the outside looking in. But again, busyness doesn't necessarily mean profitable. It just means we're active. We're doing a lot of things. We've got a lot of technicians, got a lot of vans, doing the hiring. We're doing all these things. But busyness measures activity. Profitability actually measures contribution. And those are not the same. For most business owners, they feel, like I've said a million times, but once we get to a certain revenue point, then we'll have made it. However, if we can't be profitable at $3 million, there's no chance we're going to be profitable at $5 million. So let's talk about what's actually happening under the surface of these businesses. In the residential service space especially, there are a lot of moving parts that can really eat into our margin. Just because a technician works 8 hours a day doesn't mean they're actually contributing 8 hours a day, because there's drive time, there's time in the morning, there's time in the afternoon. And if we look at all the work we do, sometimes we're generating, and we might not know, but sometimes the hours are generating strong margin. Other times we're barely covering labor. We might have a few weak links that they're dragging everything down. And if we don't really know our numbers, many times a lot of those hours are quietly destroying our profit while making the business feel productive. We're doing all these things. Again, we're doing all the things that feels like what we should be doing. But if we're not profitable, or if we don't know our numbers, that's where we're going to get stuck. So we don't want to determine success based on how many people we have, how much revenue we're doing, how busy we are. We want to see profit. We want to see cash flow. That's how we're going to determine success. So, what's getting in the way? First, there's a lot of low margin work that's being done that we might not even know it's low margin. So, again, knowing all of our numbers, and we'll get into it in a little bit, we need to know, what do we need to charge per hour? We need to know our non-billable rate. We need to know what it actually costs to send somebody out, because there are a lot more things than just what their wages are. We have workers' comp, we have payroll tax, we have unemployment insurance, we have vacation, we have 401k, we have health insurance, and all of the things that go in, especially on the service side of sending technicians out. And depending on your model, usually we're sending them out with $0 on the board for the day. So it's up to them to produce it. But when, we get lost in the shuffle, we get lost in the weeds, we stop paying attention to, what work is actually filling our schedule. Is it profitable? Are these maintenance agreements actually doing what they're supposed to do? Or are we just doing maintenance agreements because everyone else says we should? Now, yes, maintenance agreements are super important, but we have to have a strategy around it of how do we turn this into profit? Do we give our technicians the ability to discount, or do we give our comfort advisors the ability to discount? What does that discount actually do to your margins? What about warranty work? What about callbacks? Are we factoring in all of that too? How much time are we spending on a daily, weekly, monthly basis doing callbacks and warranty work? And are we factoring that into when we're actually charging for service? And then, looking at competition, if we're trying to compete on price, we're probably going to lose, because here's the thing, most businesses don't know why they charge what they charge. So if we're just going to do what everyone else is doing, it's the blind leading the blind. So what do we actually need to do? We need to know our actual margins. We need to stop worrying about all the other stuff and focus on the margins. That's what I do as a CFO every day. We let the numbers dictate what does this business actually have to do to get to where we want to go. We remove the emotion, remove the ego, and remove the excuses. Those 3 E's, emotion, ego, and excuses, in my opinion, those are the 3 things getting in the way of us actually having financial success. Emotion, we're just doing things based on, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I don't know, we've always done it this way, but there's actually no science or numbers to back it up. Or our ego is, we want to have that picture with 12 trucks, even though we're only running 6 every day. Or we want to say we're a $5 million company, even though we made more money at $3 million. Or our excuses is we can convince ourselves of anything. We can say, the reason we're not profitable is the economy, or we're just in a bad geographic area, or you don't understand it. PE has really just taken over, our geographic area. And it's all these things that, the most successful companies, they're not making excuses. They're not letting their ego get in the way, and they aren't using emotion to make decisions. So what else is getting in the way? Like I said, labor inefficiency is going to hide inside of busyness. What is labor inefficiency? How much time are our technicians actually turning the wrench? And then even looking at it in the office. So an office gets more inefficient as time goes on because that's just the nature of humans. So I always just use this very simple example. When you first started your business, maybe you're doing between $500,000 and $700,000 in revenue, and you have an office manager who kind of does everything. And eventually they get to full capacity. They're the CSR, they're the dispatcher, they're doing some billing, they're doing a little bit of everything. And then eventually they just get pulled in too many directions and they're not functional anymore. So we hire a second person. So say that first person was at 110% capacity. They were like literally working almost every second of every day. Well, now we bring in a second person, and if we just do basic math, now both people are working at, take 110 divided by 2, both people are working at 55%, right? So right there, we have just uncovered a significant amount of inefficiency. Now, I know that's what we need to do to scale, because we can only, we can't go from 110 to 120. We can't work someone, 200% capacity. That's not sustainable. So doing it the first time makes total sense. Doing it always, if it's done correctly, it always makes sense to lower that efficiency short term. But what happens is people's ceilings become lower and lower. So that first hire, they were used to working at 110%. But now when you have 3, 4, 5 people in the office, they're all used to working like 70%. If you look at all the wasted time in an office, there's a lot of it. So if everybody's at 70% and there's 5 people, right, that's 30% that is not being used. Multiply that by 5 people. That's 1.5 roles right there. And depending on your leadership style, employees get very comfortable like, hey, I need help. Hey, I need another person to do this. And if you keep saying yes, well, human beings, they learn by doing. So they're going to be like, oh, well, I know once I get a little too busy, I'll just ask for help and they'll bring in somebody else. So we got to cut that out. And then even, going back to the technician side, what's eating into our labor inefficiency on the tech side? Drive time. Poor routing. Is your dispatcher, actually focused on the routing? Are they focused on right tech, right call? Are they sending the right technician to the right opportunity to make sure they maximize every opportunity? Are there training gaps? Do you not really have a training program? So you're sending people out into the wild without all the tools, knowledge, and expertise in order to do what they need to do. And then, like I said, I mentioned it before, looking at callbacks, warranty work, and all the stuff that, just go out there, run it, it only take you 10 minutes, right? People say all the time, only take me 5 minutes. Yeah, but it's 30 minutes there. It's not 5 minutes when you're there. It's probably at least 30 minutes when you're there, even if it's a 5-minute fix, because you're parking, getting out, talking to the customer, checking everything else, doing the thing. And it's not just 5 minutes. So first, looking at our margins, what are the margins on all the work we're doing? Secondly, all the inefficiencies in our labor in the office, especially as we scale, in the office, out in the field. And then third, we really want to look at the service mix. What type of work are we doing? What's the most profitable work that we actually doing? And is our marketing, is our training, and everything supplementing what we need to supplement? So, historically, most of our clients, it really doesn't matter the industry, whether it's garage doors, HVAC, plumbing, usually we'll have a service side. So it's usually service and maintenance. We'll have an install side where they're doing replacements. And then sometimes we'll have a construction side. Well, do we know the margins on each of those? Can we break it out in our QuickBooks to see, construction's at this gross profit, installs at this gross profit, and then services at this gross profit? And then can we look at the closing rate of those? And then can we look at the job costing of all those? So making sure our mix of work is actually lining up with our goals, our team, our training, and everything like that. So those are really kind of the 3 big things. Again, we could spend another episode on each one of those, but first, looking at the margins of all our work and making sure we're hitting our targets. When we say margin, we're looking at gross profit. What is gross profit? It's revenue minus cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold, 2 main drivers are going to be your labor and then your materials. Secondly, just looking at the inefficiencies from a labor side, not even anything else, but just from a labor side, office and out in the field, slowly eating away our margins. And then third, just knowing our different mix of work, what are the margins on each, and how are we going to get to where we want to go. So combine all those factors, dangerous things happen, right? We were chasing the revenue for so long, and now we're at the point, in my opinion, where we really got to slow down, build a foundation so we can sustainably scale to the next level, which at first we need to build a solid financial foundation. So what happens when we combine all those factors and we are a big 3, 5, 8, $10 million company? The schedule's still going to be full. The team is going to be busy. But again, the margins are not going to be there. We still have to pay all of our overhead. We still have to pay all our payroll. We still got to pay all our marketing. So what do? We're like, well, everything still feels tight. So let's go get more revenue. So we're going to go get more revenue, more volume, and we're ignoring all the things we just talked about. Labor efficiencies, our margins, and then our mix of work. We might be chasing the construction work because it's like, oh, it's $100,000. But if it's $100,000 at 20% gross profit, it's actually probably costing us money. So don't just chase the volume and the busyness and the revenue and the more technicians and the more vans just to try and solve the cash flow problem. If you do not know exactly where your margins are and you don't have KPIs and you don't know why you're at where you're at, getting more revenue will not solve the problem. It's just the easiest thing in our mind to do because we convince ourselves, well, if we just do more revenue, that more money will solve the problem. It's not going to solve the problem if we haven't fixed the structures and the foundations of the business. Instead of relieving pressures, it's just going to amplify because the foundation stays the same. Think about building a house again. If we have a weak foundation and we add another layer, another level, another floor, everything's going to get a little bit weaker. Everything's going to get a little bit weaker. And then we start putting Band-Aids on things. And then we're like, well, if we just build it high enough, eventually it'll be stable. If you think about it that way, it's impossible to happen. So what actually happens and why do owners feel trapped? When busyness replaces profitability, when that's the only thing we're looking at, what's going to happen briefly. The team's going to get burned out. It's like, I can only run so many service calls. When you start running that many service calls, what do they know? They're like, I just got to rush through these because I know I'm going to have another one after this. I know I'm not going to get home till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. My spouse isn't going to be happy. My family's not going to be happy. So techs start to burn out, and they're realizing that the harder they work, it's not benefiting them at all because it's not going to solve the margin problem. So we start hiring more people. We're like, well, everyone seems really busy, so let's hire more people in the office. Going back to what we just said, is that actually going to solve the problem? Probably not, because we're busy doing work that's not profitable. It's just going to increase our overhead, increase our stress, and then we think, well, let's go get more revenue and more revenue. And we start to build a house of cards because cash flow still remains inconsistent. And then eventually it feels like, why am I doing all this work for not any more money? I have conversations all the time with $5, $10 million home service business owners who say, I just want to go back to like me, someone answering the phone, and an apprentice, and I can go make, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year and be perfectly fine and not stressed out because we've told ourselves all along that more revenue is going to solve this problem, and it's not. We need to get profitable first. We need our margins to not fluctuate. We need the cash balance not to swing. We can solve all that if we start using numbers to actually drive that. So what do we start doing differently? We stop just looking at busyness. We stop celebrating our calendars full, or, we just signed a new $100,000 contract with so-and-so builder. And we start actually looking at the business from a different lens. What do we actually need to do to fund our overhead? How much gross profit do we need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to break even? How much gross profit do we need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to achieve our profit goals? Because if we don't have profit, we do not have a business for very long. We can fund it with a line of credit for a little while, and we can, use this deposit to pay for that, and then we can ask our vendors for a little bit more time, a little bit better terms. We promise, we just need to sign a couple, just get a little bit more revenue, and then this won't be a problem. But it's always going to be a problem until we solve the solid foundation issue. So, like I said, what are the best operators doing? They're looking at the gross profit. They're looking at labor efficiency. They're looking at their mix of work and, what division and what are they actually producing and what do we need them to produce in order to get to where we want to go. If you can remove your emotion and your ego and your excuses and really start using the numbers to guide your business, you will be better off. Again, it's going to feel like you're slowing down. You're going to slow down to speed up, in my opinion. We're going to build a solid foundation so then we can get Say we're at 5 million, then we can get to 10 million. We're going to get there profitably. It's going to be more fun. It's going to be less stressful. There's going to be more money in the bank, and we're going to sleep better at night. So let's start asking better questions in order to get where we want to go. Again, we have to answer those questions honestly, removing our emotion, removing our ego, and stop making excuses of why you're not profitable and why more revenue will solve that problem. The best operators, owners, they do not care how busy the team is. They care how profitable the team is. They're focused on how much time are they spending? What's their closing rate? What's their average ticket? And they're tracking this on a regular basis. Their dispatchers know. Their CSR knows how many calls they have to book, what type of calls they have to book. Their dispatcher knows how much revenue does each person have to do a day based on their skill set, based on where they're at, based on what type of work they're doing. That's what these owners are doing. They are slowing down to speed up. As the saying goes, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You cannot get rich overnight. There is no get rich quick scheme in home service. There's no get rich quick scheme anywhere. It takes time, it takes discipline, and it takes asking the right questions and using numbers to guide your business. So if your company is busy and cash still feels tight, that means there is something wrong. Do not assume you just need more leads and more revenue. Understand that if everybody is working at more or less capacity and there's still not money in the bank, there is a systemic foundational issue with your business from a financial standpoint. Assume that you need better visibility into how work converts to profit, knowing all of your numbers and simplifying it as much as possible. When you can start to improve your margins, pressure is going to become a lot less. Like I said, you're going to sleep better at night. There's going to be more money in the bank. You're going to get better terms with your vendors because you can pay them earlier, which then helps your profit. And it really becomes a snowball in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. So lastly, if this episode resonated with you, if you want to discuss it further, if you want more information, if you want to dig into this, I encourage everybody to do so. But head on over to our website, thebluecollaradvisors.com. There you can learn more about how I work with owners, if you want to book a call, if that makes sense, there's no charge. We're just going to dig into your business, figure out where you want to go, what's working, what's not working, what's getting in the way of actually where you want to go. There's a pricing calculator there. So if you're not sure if you're priced right, you can download a pricing calculator. And then there are additional resources as well from the podcast. So again, that's thebluecollaradvisors.com. Lastly, this podcast exists to create clarity, get rid of all the BS. Again, the ego, the emotion, the excuses, and let's just get into what is working and not working from a number standpoint. Until then, I'll see you in the next boardroom briefing.